Have you ever looked at an old photo and not recognized yourself in it? I had a life that many people dream of. A small white house in the suburbs, with a flower garden in the front and a swing in the back. A gentle wife, 2 children who always smiled when they ran out to hug me after work. A stable job in the financial sector, good income, solid position. My life, from the outside, almost perfect. I used to be a trustworthy, punctual, responsible man. I woke up every morning at 5 a.m., went for a run, made coffee for my wife, took my kids to school, and got to the office before my boss. Every night I would say goodbye to my kids with fairy tales that I made up. Every weekend I took the whole family on a picnic or simply had a barbecue in the backyard. I love my family, I really do. I love my job, even though it's stressful. I consider myself a good man, and that is probably the reason why I did not foresee that I was about to do the worst thing of my life. It didn't happen overnight. There was no dramatic scene. Just the fatigue, the self-deception, the moments of weakness that accumulated like a tiny crack. Then one day it suddenly burst. I made a mistake, just one mistake, but enough to lose everything. And what haunted me for years after, I didn't realize I was sliding down until it was too late. I had no one to blame but myself. It all started in those final months of the year. The pressure of work, the big contracts, the meetings that lasted late into the night. I often came home late. I started skipping dinner with my wife and kids. I thought, it's just a phase. I'll make it up to you after this. But this phase dragged on, and I gradually drifted away from the home I once loved. Then there was a woman at work, a new colleague. She listened to me, shared my stress, laughed when I told her stories. At first it was just harmless chats, a few coffees after work. I knew I was playing with fire, but I told myself, I can control it. And then I couldn't control it. That relationship crossed the line. And when my wife found out, not by a scene like in the movies, but just by the silence and the look on my face when I came home, she didn't scream. She didn't break anything. She just stood there, looked at me, and said one sentence. Do you know, you just broke the whole little world that I thought was safe. I couldn't answer. I didn't know who I was anymore. 3 days later, I moved out of the house. A suitcase, a few clothes, and the indescribable pain of seeing my youngest son standing at the window calling, Daddy, where are you going? Why didn't you kiss me goodnight like you always do? I turned away because I couldn't bear that look, because I had caused my son to lose a home. My wife didn't make a fuss. She didn't threaten. She didn't sue. She just made the decision and kept her dignity. I lost my family. My friends stayed away. The company slowly pushed me aside. A year later I quit. I was at a low ebb. I moved into a cheap apartment in a bad neighborhood. Every night, lying on my old mattress, I thought, why did I ruin everything for a momentary emotion? Why am I so stupid? I had no answers, only tears and silence. I used to think, losing my wife, losing my kids, losing my job, that was the end. But actually the end is when you no longer want to get out of bed in the morning. It's when you look in the mirror and you no longer see a person, just a shell. I lived like that for almost 2 years. Eating instant noodles, drinking cheap beer, sleeping, surfing the internet mindlessly, not calling home, not opening emails, not talking to anyone, just existing, not living. One bitterly cold winter night, I sat huddled on the stairs of my apartment building. The electricity had been cut off because I owed 3 months of rent. In my hand was an unfinished bottle of whiskey. I thought about ending it all. But then, the phone vibrated. A text message. from an unknown number. The content was just, "I don't know who you are, but I found your old email on a financial forum. I read the articles you shared in 2014. Thank you. They helped me a lot. I hope to buy you a cup of coffee one day to say thank you." I sat in silence for a long time after that message. A stranger somewhere in the world remembered me. A tiny part of my old self, still alive, still valuable. I cried, not because I was happy, but because for the first time in 2 years, I felt seen. And I asked myself, if a stranger believes I am valuable, why can't I try again? The next morning I woke up early. I showered, shaved. For the first time in almost a year, I looked straight into the mirror and whispered, "You're still here, you're still breathing, so get up." I started with the smallest thing, cleaning my room. Then I applied for a job as a waiter at a nearby coffee shop. I took the morning shift. 5 a.m. wake up, mop floors, make coffee, serve food. No more vest, no more six-figure paycheck. But I felt real. 1 week, then 2 months, then 6 months. I wrote again. First in a diary, then a blog. I told my story, without hiding it, without embellishment. And the strange thing was, every time I told it, the pain inside me lightened a little. It was like I was unraveling the chains I had wrapped around my heart. I learned to live again, in the little things. Waking up early, exercising, eating boiled eggs for breakfast instead of pastries and beer, reading in the library, writing down each day as if I were taking my life exam all over again, from scratch. I learned to forgive myself, not in one day, but one chapter at a time. I learned to live again in the little things. Waking up early, exercising, eating boiled eggs for breakfast instead of pastries and beer, reading in the library, write down each day as if I were taking my life exam all over again, from scratch. I learned to forgive myself, not in one day, but one chapter at a time. One day, I got an email from my eldest son. It was just one line. "How are you? I read your blog. I understand. I miss you." I put my head down on the table and cried like a baby, not because he forgave me, but because he was old enough to listen, something I had failed to do with him. I didn't run to his house right away. I kept writing, sending letters every week. After almost a year, my ex-wife agreed to let me see him on a Saturday afternoon in the old park. He was almost as tall as me. He didn't rush to hug me. He just sat there, silent. Then he handed me a sandwich he'd made himself. "You like grilled chicken with mustard, right?" I nodded, unable to say anything, because my throat was clogged with love, a love that never dies. I didn't ask for a start over with my ex-wife. I knew that some things that were broken would never be healed. But we started talking. And then one day she texted, "Thank you for being the father I needed again." That was enough. I didn't need anything more. I continued to write. I told my story in schools and groups and rehab, not as a hero, but as someone who had fallen and was lucky enough to get up again. Whenever someone asked, "How do you forgive yourself?" I said, "I start by being kind to today, one day and then another." I still live alone, but I am no longer lonely, because I know there is someone out there struggling with their darkness too. And if my story can be a small light to help them see the way, then I have not lived in vain. If you're listening to this very last second, I want to thank you. Not because you've patiently listened to the story of a man who once lost himself, but because you're still here, in this moment, with a heart big enough to empathize. I'm not telling this story to get sympathy. I'm telling it because I believe we all have mistakes, regrets, dark corners that we keep hidden. Maybe you haven't destroyed your family like I did, But maybe you're hiding something that makes you feel unworthy of love, unworthy of starting over. I want you to know you are not alone. You may have sat in the dark like me, wanting to disappear, but I am here to remind you of something that seems so simple, but has saved me. As long as you are breathing, you can start over. No one can turn back time. I cannot go back to the days when I was a trustworthy father, a listening husband, or a model employee, but I can live today as a better person than I was yesterday, and so on, every day. I used to think my life was over at 40. Now at 50, I write, I tell stories, I share, and each time I do it, I feel more alive than ever. If you are at your lowest point in life, I can't promise you the light will come soon, but I know if you choose not to let go, if you just believe a little more, one day you will step out of the darkness and realize you were never really lost. You just needed to be found. If this story resonates with you, I hope you share it with someone who needs to hear it. It could be a friend who is suffering in silence. It could be you tomorrow. Subscribe and turn on notifications. I'll be back, not to tell perfect stories, but to tell stories about imperfect people who are always trying.